Why people vote for Trump. They say in politics, liberals are the gas pedal and conservatives are the brakes. And I'm generally with the gas pedal, but not if we're driving off a cliff. On the trans issue, America is no ands, ifs, or buts about it, absolutely alone in the world now, an outlier country. Last month, England's National Health Service announced that there's not enough evidence to support the safety or clinical effectiveness of puberty blockers for third graders, and that they were going to stop fumbling around with children's privates because that.
For years, the woke left has treated Canada like their gleaming utopia, a frosty paradise of progressive perfection that America should supposedly emulate. But not everyone's sipping that maple-flavored Kool-Aid, and Bill Maher just proved it. In a fiery segment of Real Time with Bill Maher, the comedian torched the myth of Canada's flawless liberal dream, exposing the cracks beneath the snow. Buckle up. This takedown burns hotter than a campfire in the Yukon.
Canada was where every woke white college kid wearing pajama pants outdoors who'd had it up to here with America's racist patriarchy dreamt of living someday. I mean, besides Gaza. There's only one problem with thinking everything's better in Canada. It's not. Not anymore, anyway. Last year, Canada added 1.3 million people, which is a lot in 1 year, the equivalent of the U.S. adding 11 million migrants in 1 year. And now they're experiencing a housing crisis even worse than ours. And we're sleeping in tents.
Right out of the gate, Maher shreds the woke left's cotton candy fantasy of Canada as some flawless liberal wonderland. His first target? The country's catastrophic housing crisis, a mess supercharged by wide-open immigration policies that America's progressives drool over like it's the secret to utopia. The truth, Maher points out, is brutal. Canada faces a jaw-dropping 3.5 million unit housing shortfall by 2030, a gap so massive it makes California's market look affordable. Even now, over 1 in 5 Canadian households are sinking more than 30% of their income just to keep a roof overhead. Yet the woke faithful still parade Canada around as the model society. Maher doesn't just mock that delusion, he incinerates it.
The price of a home here is $346,000. In Canada, converted to US dollars, it's $487,000. If Barbie moved to Winnipeg, she wouldn't be able to afford her dream house, and Ken would be working at Tim Hortons.
Housing in Canada isn't just expensive, it's downright punishing. The numbers alone could give anyone sticker shock. The average home price across the country sits between $500,000 and $540,000, and in hotspots like Vancouver and Toronto, that number blasts past $750,000 to well over $1 million US dollars without breaking a sweat. Stack that against the US, where the typical home runs closer to $350,000 to $400,000, and suddenly Canada's so-called paradise starts to look more like a financial nightmare. Yet the woke left keeps preaching about copying Canada's grand design, as if everyone could just pack up and thrive there. Let's be honest, most of them are already struggling to stay afloat in America. Add Canadian-level housing prices to the mix, and you're not building a utopia. You're drafting an eviction notice for half the country. Maher's point cuts deep. Imitate Canada's model, and you don't get affordable living. You get priced out of your own front door.
Because of mortgage debt, Canada has the highest debt-to-GDP ratio of any G7 nation. I don't know what that means, but it sounds bad. So does their vaunted healthcare system, which ranks dead last among high-income countries in access to primary healthcare and ability to see a doctor in a day or two. And it's not for lack of spending. Of the 30 countries with universal coverage, Canada spends over 13% of its economy on it, which is a lot of money for free healthcare.
Canada's troubles run a lot deeper than the Liberal fan club ever dared to imagine, and the cracks in their frosty utopia are spreading faster than they'd like to admit. And here's the twist. Bill Maher isn't some fire-breathing conservative pundit waving a MAGA flag. He's a lifelong liberal, once hailed as one of the left's own icons. That's exactly what makes his takedown sting so much. When a guy like Maher starts calling out Canada, it's not just a few cracks in the dream, it's the sound of the whole illusion shattering. But Maher's not ranting just to score laughs or clicks. He's drawing a mirror. One he's holding up to America with that trademark smirk and asking the uncomfortable question, is this really the model you want to copy? Because if Canada's the blueprint, then the US better brace itself for sky-high housing costs, broken promises, and a mountain of regret. And the best part? Maher's just getting started.
Saying Canada still isn't a great country, it is, but those aren't paradise numbers. If Canada was an apartment, the lead feature might be America adjacent. And if America was a rental car, Canada would be America or similar. And again, honestly, Canada, I'm not saying any of this because I enjoy it. I don't, because I've always enjoyed you. But I need to cite you as a cautionary tale to help my country. And the moral of that tale is, yes, you can move too far left. And when you do, you wind up pushing the people in the middle to the right.
Is Bill Maher confessing to going conservative? Has he suddenly crossed over to the right? Not quite. What's really happening is the natural recoil that comes when the left drifts too far into its own ideological la-la land. When progressivism becomes so detached from reality that even lifelong liberals can't stomach it anymore, the pendulum inevitably swings back. Most of these people don't turn conservative out of newfound love for the right. They simply wake up to the madness unfolding around them. Just look at Joe Rogan. Once celebrated as the cool, countercultural voice of the progressive crowd, now smeared as right-wing for daring to question woke orthodoxy. Or Elon Musk, a man who builds electric cars and rockets, hardly a traditional conservative resume. Yet he's been branded center-right simply for refusing to play along. Bill Maher fits the same pattern. He hasn't changed his values. The left has just sprinted so far off the cliff that anyone who stands their ground suddenly looks conservative by comparison.
What's worse, Canada is what American voters think happens when there's no one putting a check on extreme wokeness. Like the saga of Canadian shop teacher Kayla Lemieux, whose pronouns are she, her, and those. Kayla is now back to being a guy named Kerry, but 2 years ago when they showed up to teach children, the progressive high school they taught at said that they, the school, not the person. Really, you couldn't have found another word. We were using that one. Anyway, okay. They were committed to a safe environment for gender expression. Safe for who? What about the children?
This is what happens when a society decides that personal identity is something everyone else must constantly adapt to on command. The outcome isn't enlightenment, it's confusion. Maher highlights one classroom where even the students couldn't keep up. One day, their teacher arrives in a dress, demanding to be addressed as a woman and praised for living authentically. The next, he's back to identifying as a man, as if the entire performance never happened. The students are left bewildered, unsure of who they're supposed to be talking to or how to respond. This isn't education, it's performance art gone off the rails. And not the kind that inspires or uplifts, it's the kind that replaces clarity with chaos. When identity becomes a revolving door, truth gets lost in the spin, and what remains is a fog of contradictions no one can make sense of.
The equipment in that shop class. There was once a weirdo D-list movie producer in the 60s named Russ Maher, who made low-budget B movies like Faster Pussycat Kill Kill and Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, always featuring women who look like this. His movies played in porn houses and were featured in Hustler and Playboy. Okay, fine, but who says no when it comes to huge, ridiculous save that for the kids?
Keep in mind, these extreme examples of wokeness aren't playing out in some distant social experiment. They're happening right next door, in Canada, the very nation America's liberals keep pointing to as their shining example of progress. This is the supposed golden model, the North Star of enlightened governance. But once you scrape away that sweet maple syrup coating, the truth isn't nearly as pretty. What you actually find are sky-high housing costs crushing families, identity politics spinning classrooms into chaos, and government policies that feel more like social experiments than real solutions. Yet the American left keeps gazing across the border like starstruck fans, convinced Canada is living out their utopian dream. It would be funny if it weren't so tragic, because if this is what paradise looks like, it's built on debt, dysfunction, and illusion. Bill Maher's point lands hard. Before liberals start demanding that America copy Canada, maybe they should take a long, honest look at what's really happening up north. Spoiler alert, the fantasy doesn't survive the facts.
This is why people vote for Trump. They say in politics, liberals are the gas pedal and conservatives are the brakes. And I'm generally with the gas pedal, but not if we're driving off a cliff. On the trans issue, America is no ands, ifs, or buts about it, absolutely alone in the world now, an outlier country. Last month, England's National Health Service announced that there's not enough evidence to support the safety or clinical effectiveness of puberty blockers for third graders, and that they were going to stop fumbling around with children's privates, because that's Prince Andrew's job.
Maher hits the nail on the head. Trump didn't win by accident. His rise wasn't some political fluke. It was a reaction, a rebellion against the tidal wave of wokeness flooding out of the modern left. By the time the Democratic National Committee had turned itself into a carnival of identity politics, cancel culture, and moral grandstanding, millions of Americans, not just conservatives, but centrists and disillusioned liberals, had had enough. It wasn't just the right rolling their eyes. Moderates and independents were walking away, too. Even the younger generation, the group Democrats assumed would be loyal forever, started tuning out. They didn't sign up to trade freedom of thought for ideological obedience. The DNC stopped feeling like a political movement and started sounding like a scolding lecture. And here's the truth. Americans don't vote for lectures. They vote for leadership. When the left forgot that, they didn't just lose an election. They handed Donald Trump the perfect opening, and he walked right through it.
To with all the other good place countries, in direct opposition to America's choice to affirm children's wishes on switching gender, no matter the age or psychiatric history. The far left, which always like to use, well, Europe does it. Yeah, no, that doesn't work on this one anymore.
Here's the irony the woke crowd refuses to acknowledge. Many of the very countries they idolize as shining examples of progress don't even endorse gender-affirming care for minors. In fact, several have rejected it outright. Nations like Sweden, Finland, and the United Kingdom, long celebrated by the American left as models of enlightened governance, have now scaled back or restricted medical transitioning for children, citing serious long-term risks and a lack of solid evidence. Some have even banned such treatments entirely until individuals reach legal adulthood. These governments examined the data, confronted the consequences, and ultimately chose to protect children over appeasing activists. Meanwhile, in the United States, the left continues to champion these practices as if they represent the height of progress, pretending the rest of the world is on board. Spoiler alert, they're not. Even the enlightened nations the left so admires have realized that when it comes to children's health, ideology should never outweigh evidence.
Immigration. Sweden opened its borders to over 1.5 million immigrants since 2010, and now 20% of its citizens are foreign-born, and its education system is tanking, and it has Europe's highest rate of gangland killings. And one result is that the far-right parties are in the government now there for the first time. To which liberals say blaming immigrants for the rising crime rate is racist. Yeah, but is it true? Of course it's true. It's not a coincidence the quality of life went down after the Somali gangs started a drug turf war using hand grenades. Calling it racist doesn't solve the problem. It hands future elections to someone who will solve the problem and who, I promise, you're not going.
Exactly. Throwing the borders wide open to anyone who feels like strolling and isn't compassion. It's chaos disguised as virtue. And we're seeing the results play out in real time. Under the Biden administration, fentanyl smuggling and overdose deaths have exploded, flooding American communities with one of the deadliest substances on Earth. This isn't some abstract policy debate. It's an unfolding national tragedy. Families are being torn apart, neighborhoods gutted, and an entire generation is being wiped out. The statistics are horrifying, but behind every number is a face, a son, a daughter, a parent, gone too soon. The left calls it compassion, but what kind of compassion ends with kids overdosing in school bathrooms and families burying their loved ones before their time? Maher's point couldn't be clearer. A nation that can't control its borders can't protect its people, and without protection, there's no peace, only chaos masquerading as policy. In the end, Maher's takedown of Canada and the radical left isn't just comedy, it's a reality check wrapped in wit. From the housing collapse to identity confusion, border breakdowns, and fentanyl devastation, the so-called progressive utopia collapses under its own hypocrisy. America doesn't need to copy Canada's blueprint. It needs a return to sanity, leadership, and truth.